How's it going? I want to talk to you about the Canon F-1. I haven't done a YouTube video before. Well, I've uploaded a few, but they weren't about me. And I've been in photography for a decent amount of time. This was my first film camera, and since then I've had a Leica CL, and then after a number of years, after 6 years, picked up a M6. And I don't only do film, but I do like film, and this is a big reason why. Is at the time I had a Nikon D90, and I had found this at a flea market for $25, including the lens, which is a 50mm 1.4 FD, Canon FD, and the pictures were just crazy sharp and amazing. And I said, wow, this film stuff is pretty good, and I'd like to learn a little more about it. And so I dug into it and really got into it, probably like a lot of you. But I held on to this, and it's probably been 7 to 8 years since I bought this. And the body was pristine when I bought it, and I've used it, but not a ridiculous amount. And so the body kind of still looks the same. It's in great shape. And it's one of those modular Canons that you can change the viewfinder. You can add a ton of accessories to it on the top here. You can add accessories to the back, definitely on the bottom. And it has some pretty cool technology, but still for the most part, mechanical, well-built, hefty weight. It does feel like a tank, but you can tell that it will last for a while. And so I assumed that it would. And it was sitting on my shelf. And so about 3 days ago, I was talking with some friends, and I said, hey, I have some extra film cameras that maybe you'd like to use, and we can go out and shoot. So I took it off the shelf, and I wanted to just make sure it was working before I handed it over to them. And I get to the film advance, and it's stuck. Well, logical explanation is it's already advanced and you can't advance it anymore. And so you should be able to click the shutter, and it would release the shutter. It would take a picture, or if there's film, it would take a picture, but it's not releasing the shutter. And the shutter button is depressing. It seems like it would work. It isn't stuck or locked. And so I looked online and I said, what is going on? Canon F1 film release, or sorry, film advance stuck, shutter not working. You know, I don't know what else to look for on Google, but that led me to a few places to find some information that I'm trying to decide if it was helpful or not. But it definitely shed light on some of the issues that other people had, which was, one, they had moved. So here around the shutter button, there's this mechanism that can move, and when it's on A, the shutter button depresses. When it's on L, it's locked and it doesn't depress. And so I said, well, I should definitely keep it on A if I want it to work, but it's still not working. Someone on some forum mentioned that it could work in complete manual mode on a shutter speed of 250, or I think it was 2000, and that didn't work. And I thought, well, I haven't done anything to it. I haven't dropped it. I rarely use it, so it shouldn't have stopped working since the last time I used it and it did work. So what is it? And I couldn't find anything that said I had this problem and this is what I did to fix it. Most of the things I found said, I have this problem and it's broken. I can't fix it. you would have to do a complete overhaul, get under the camera and figure out what's wrong with the shutter release or the film advance. And I had remembered that there's this little contraption here. Comes off pretty easy. And there's a battery. And like I said, I have an M6, and I know the M6 can work manually and the battery is used for the meter. And so my assumption was that the battery in this camera was also just used for the meter. And I couldn't find anything suggesting that if the battery was dead, then the shutter wouldn't work, because a mechanical camera would work whether there's a battery or not. It would just release the shutter. But I ordered one anyways, and I said, it's the only moving part in here that I've pressed every single button on here. Let me just show you the rest of the camera. There's a top, there's a back, bottom. Like I said, it's in pristine condition, almost like new. And I took the battery out, and I said, maybe it's the battery being in there dead. If it's dead, I didn't know if it was dead. It still didn't work. Well, today the battery came in. There it is. So this is the new battery, and I put the new battery in there. The film release still was not moving, which again, this assumption is that it was already cocked. But then I pressed the shutter, and it worked. Let me do it again. And it worked. Now, you may have seen in there the aperture blades. Let's see if you can try it one more time. You see that? Well, side note on this camera, which is very unique and pretty cool, is that when it's not taking a picture and you move the aperture to change the aperture of the lens, the blades don't move. And that's just something this camera and the Canon FD lens on these cameras do. They don't move. And so if you pick this camera up at a store or flea market and you look at the lens and you turn the aperture and you say, you know, the blades aren't working, they must be stuck, this camera is broken, it's not working, and I don't want to spend the time to fix it. Well, what I would say is click the shutter, because on this camera and this lens, when you set the aperture, the blades don't actually show, don't release, if you will, until you release the shutter. And so the shutter and the aperture blades actually almost come out simultaneously to take the picture. Whether that's better or not, I don't know, but it's just what this camera does, and it's pretty cool. So let me show you one more time. See, so that was at 5.6. Let me show you at 1.4. And you see how much wider that was, and this is at 16. It should have just a tiny hole. I'll slow it down. Well, that's for the shutter, so that actually doesn't matter. Well, that's this camera, and I don't want to talk too long, but if you have a Canon F-1 and for some reason, after you cock the film release, the film advance, and you press the shutter and it doesn't release, it's the battery. So get a new battery, put it in, and your camera should be good to go. Thanks for watching. If there's any other thing that I find quirky or that I think would be helpful for folks, I will put it out there. The reason I did this video is because I couldn't find anything that said just change the battery. So I want to save some of y'all a headache, and I'm going to go on and say just change the battery. Your camera is just fine.